On August 28, 1963, I was 17 years old. I knew that Martin Luther King was scheduled to give the speech, so I made sure I was home. It was during summer vacation between my junior and senior years in high school. So I was home sitting in this white leather reclining chair in our den, and I turned the speech on.
Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring in windy Appalachia.
I don't think the fundamental meaning of the speech has changed at all. I still think it is poetic and powerful and beautiful and wise. And I think the manifestations of racial disparity and the way we treat each other and the way life works out for us are somewhat different than they were in the late 60s. And I talked about some of those 20 years ago when I spoke in the Mason Temple in Memphis when Dr. King, where he gave his last speech. But the meaning has changed for me mostly in my realizing that it has a global message. That is, if you look all around the world, the people that are embracing diversity and the idea that every person should have an equal chance to develop his or her God-given abilities to live his or her best life story. Wherever that happens, people are doing well. Where they're cooperating and reinforcing one another, they're doing well. Wherever there is a social climate or a political policy of division and the zero-sum game of putting one group down at the other's expense, people are not doing well. It may be good politics, but it's terrible for society, and it doesn't work in the 21st century world. So Martin Luther King's message should resonate in every corner of the world, in remote villages in Africa and Asia and countries in Latin America, wherever there are still enduring conflicts, people should listen to what he said. Before Dr. King got up to speak, there were all these other really important people there. There clearly was a majority of the American people at that time for doing what had to be done.
Next week, I shall ask the Congress of the United States to act, to make a commitment it is not fully made in this century to the proposition that race has no place in American life or law.
President Kennedy's administration had taken some aggressive steps to integrate some of the colleges in America to fully follow the Supreme Court decisions on education and in other areas. And there was a lot of resistance to it. Then, in just 3 months, President Kennedy would be assassinated. And Lyndon Johnson became the president with an enormous national mandate as a result of the grief of the country and the determination to see the legacy finished. And we had then an empowered Martin Luther King, an empowered civil rights movement. All of them had made an impression on the American people with their commitment to peaceful change, thanks to the Lincoln Memorial. And we passed all that civil rights legislation and did something that was really good for the country forever. Well, he proved first by his own brilliance and eloquence that talent and ability are evenly distributed across the human race, but opportunity is not. And his own life is proof positive of the power of equal opportunity to change the future for all of us. That's the first thing. The second thing he proved was that Gandhi's message of nonviolence would work in America. Now, we may take that for granted today, but I remember when there was this huge debate in the United States in the 3 or 4 years running up to the March on Washington within the black community about whether nonviolence was a practical strategy, because people had been subject to fire hoses in Birmingham, to beatings. Medgar Evers had been shot in the back after being a combat veteran in World War II. And there were a lot of people who honestly believed that the old white power structure would never yield to equal opportunity. Martin Luther King kept saying that it would be that way, and history bore him.
I now call on Miss Daisy Bates, that great champion of Negro rights and freedom.
And we will sit in, and we will kneel in, and we will lie in if necessary, until every Negro in America can vote. This we pledge to the women of America.
Well, Daisy was, by the time of the march, she had been a major figure in the national civil rights movement for more than a decade because of the pivotal role that she played in encouraging the Little Rock Nine, the 9 African-American kids that integrated Little Rock Central High School under enormous pressure and threats of violence, and that led Governor Faubus to call out the National Guard, and then led President Eisenhower to nationalize the National Guard so the kids could integrate the school. And then Faubus wound up shutting down schools all over, trying to keep the integration from occurring. But Daisy Bates was a rock for those kids. They'll all tell you that today. And she and her husband, L.C., had put out the largest African-American-owned newspaper in the state, the Arkansas State Press in Little Rock, for years before that. They were very well known in Arkansas, but because of Little Rock and because of her critical role, Daisy became a major national figure and remained so until she died. And I loved her. She had done all kinds of things in life. She'd never made any real money or tried to. She didn't really care much about her fame. She just got up every day and tried to do the right thing.
Thank you very much. This is indeed a happy day for me. Sometime in your life, when you're fighting for freedom and human dignity, your faith fails you. And you wonder whether democracy is worth fighting for, or whether you can ever be an American citizen in this country. But something happens that renews that faith in democracy and in America and its people. That happened to me in 1957, when the students of Little Rock walked alone through the mob. You cried with us, but we had to walk it alone. But your presence here today testifies that no child will have to walk alone through a mob in any city or hamlet of this country, because you will be there, walking with them. Thank you.
We will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Well, he'd be pleased that there's more equal opportunity politically and that an African American had been elected president. He'd be pleased that African Americans are competitive in Senate races and other major elections around the country. He'd be pleased that America is more diverse and not just a biracial country, and that we seem to be doing all right with it. Martin Luther King said, anyone can be great because anybody can serve, and you should serve where you are, or in the old saying, bloom where you're planted. That if you happen to be a street sweeper, be the best street sweeper in the whole world, and serve with joy in your heart. That was his enduring message, that even in times of political adversity and personal adversity, you will be happier and your life will be more meaningful if you spend part of it giving of yourself to someone else.